In a galaxy far from Earth, there was a planet called Zephora, home to an advanced alien civilization. The Zephorans were tall, elegant beings with silver skin and eyes that shimmered like stars. Their cities floated above the ground, powered by energy sources humans could barely imagine. Life on Zephora had always been perfect, peaceful, and prosperous, but something dark was creeping into their world. For years, the Zephorans had noticed a troubling change. The youngest generation was not being born. Alien mothers carried pregnancies that never reached completion, and even the strongest children failed to survive. The scientists of Zephora were baffled, searching their laboratories for answers. No illness, no virus, no environmental disaster could explain the sudden infertility. Panic slowly spread among the people, something the Zephorans had never felt before. In the great hall of Zephora's capital, the Council of Elders gathered. Their faces were pale under the glow of the floating lights, their normally calm voices trembling with fear. "The future of our species is in danger," said Elder Thrin. "If we cannot find a solution soon, Zephora will be empty in a generation." A hush fell over the room, the weight of those words pressing down on every being present. For the first time in history, the Zephorans felt powerless. Outside the council chamber, the streets were quiet but tense. Families whispered about the crisis, children played less, and even the air seemed heavier. Some began to blame fate, others blamed the government for not acting fast enough. Rumors spread that the stars themselves were angry with Zephora. But the scientists refused to give up, searching day and night, determined to find an answer. Among the scientists was Lyra, a young and brilliant biologist. Lyra spent hours in her laboratory, studying alien DNA, ancient records, and energy patterns. She was obsessed with one question: why were Zephoran bodies failing to reproduce? Lyra had discovered that the problem was universal across the planet. Not one Zephoran child had been born in over 10 cycles. Even the rare experimental attempts at cloning had failed, leaving only sorrow and frustration. One evening, while staring at her holographic charts, Lyra noticed a pattern. It was faint, almost invisible, but she felt it could be a clue. The infertility seemed linked to an external factor, something outside Zephora itself. She ran simulations, checking every possibility, and her heart raced as a terrifying thought formed. Could it be that the survival of her entire species depended on something beyond their planet? Meanwhile, panic reached the general population. Citizens gathered in public squares, asking questions no one could answer. Children asked their parents why the world felt so uncertain. Parents tried to stay calm, but fear seeped into every corner of their homes. Some Zephorans had begun to leave the cities, hoping that another environment might restore life. But no matter where they went, the infertility remained, a dark shadow over the planet. Elder Thrin called for a special assembly of the greatest minds in Zephora. They gathered in the crystal chamber, a place where decisions of life and death had been made for centuries. "This is no ordinary problem," said Thrin, his voice echoing in the chamber. "This crisis could end everything we have built. We must act, even if the solution is dangerous." The room grew silent, the word dangerous sending chills through the scientists. They knew that Zephora had never faced anything like this before. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes shining with determination. "I believe the key to our survival is not on Zephora," she said quietly. The council froze, staring at her in disbelief. "What do you mean?" one elder asked. Lyra explained her theory, her voice shaking slightly. "Something outside our world is needed to restore life. Something we have never considered before, something human." The council erupted into debate. Many rejected the idea immediately, saying it was impossible, unethical, and dangerous. But a few elders listened carefully, intrigued by Lyra's reasoning. If her theory was correct, Zephora's survival depended on reaching beyond the stars. And the question remained, Could they trust a species they had never met before? As night fell over Zephora, the planet seemed to hold its breath. The stars above twinkled silently, as if watching. For the first time in millennia, Zephora was not a world of certainty and control. It was a world on the edge of despair, waiting for a miracle from beyond the stars. And somewhere out there, humans were about to become the most important beings Zephora had ever known. The council session ended, but no one slept that night. Every Zephoran felt the weight of the crisis pressing on their hearts. And deep inside Lyra, a spark of hope burned, small but fierce. If she could find a way to bring humanity into the solution, Zephora might survive. But failure meant extinction, and the clock was ticking faster than anyone could imagine. And so the stage was set for an impossible mission. A mission that would take Zephorans and humans into uncharted territory, where hope and fear danced together under the light of distant stars, where the survival of a civilization hung by the thinnest thread, and where the first steps toward saving Zephora were about to be taken. The world of Zephora was silent under the dim glow of its twin moons. The council chambers were empty now, but the weight of the infertility crisis still hung in the air. Lyra could not sleep, her mind racing with possibilities. She returned to her laboratory, scanning through ancient Zephoran records and DNA archives, hoping for a clue. Then she found something strange. Hidden deep in the data of interstellar communications, there were faint signals from a distant planet called Earth. At first, they were just patterns of energy, meaningless to most Zephorans. But Lyra noticed a strange anomaly, a genetic signature unlike any she had ever seen. It was alive, adaptable, and surprisingly compatible with Zephoran DNA. Could these humans, from a small blue planet, hold the key to saving an entire civilization? Lyra's excitement was mixed with fear. The council would never allow contact without proof. And yet, she could not ignore the possibility. She began running simulations, imagining what would happen if human DNA were combined with Zephoran biology. The results were shocking. Life could be restored. Children could be born again, and Zephora could survive. But there was a problem. Humans were unknown, unpredictable, and possibly dangerous. Would they agree to help a distant alien race? Could they even understand the urgency of the situation? Lyra knew she had to convince the council, but first she needed a plan. A careful, secret plan that would bring humanity into Zephora's world without panic. The council meeting the next day was tense. Elder Thrin's eyes were sharp as he questioned Lyra. Explain yourself, Lyra. This theory of yours, humans. How can a species so primitive help us? Lyra held her ground, showing simulations, genetic comparisons, and the faint traces she had found in the signals. The human's genetic structure is unique, she explained. It interacts with our DNA in ways nothing else does. If we do not act, Zephora will vanish forever. Some elders murmured in disbelief. Others were curious, their eyes widening with hope. It was the youngest elder, Vera, who finally spoke. Perhaps this is our only chance, she said. But contacting humans is risky. We do not know their intentions. Lyra nodded. Yes, but doing nothing is certain death, she said, her voice steady. The council paused, the weight of the decision pressing down. Finally, they agreed to give her permission to begin preparations for contact. Lyra began her secret mission immediately. She designed a small craft capable of interstellar travel, programmed with stealth technology so humans would not suspect anything unusual at first. She also sent messages disguised as random signals, studying Earth's broadcasts for potential volunteers. Days turned into nights, and every simulation she ran made her heart beat faster. This mission could save millions of lives or fail catastrophically. Meanwhile, humans on Earth remained unaware of the alien eyes watching them. Scientists on Earth puzzled over strange energy readings, signals they could not explain. Some dismissed them as glitches, But others, sensitive and curious, felt a strange pull toward the stars. Lyra watched quietly from her craft, studying humanity. She saw both their brilliance and their flaws. She knew it would not be easy, but hope glimmered like a fragile star. Back on Zephora, the council awaited updates anxiously. Each day without progress was another day closer to extinction. Some elders began to doubt, whispering that humanity might not come. Others feared that even if humans agreed, the plan might fail. But Lyra refused to falter. She felt the responsibility of an entire civilization on her shoulders, and she would not fail. Then, one night, a breakthrough came. A human scientist, curious and daring, responded to the hidden signal. Lyra's heart raced as she realized this was the moment Zephora had been waiting for. A connection had been made, a bridge between worlds, and a chance for life to continue. The council was called immediately. Elders gathered as Lyra explained what had happened. "This human is willing to come to us, to help," she said. Some hesitated, fear still lingering. But the majority saw the hope in Lyra's eyes. For the first time in months, Zephora dared to believe. Perhaps the survival of their species was not lost. Outside the lab, some Zephorans protested. "Humans are not one of us," they shouted in the public squares. "They do not understand our ways." Fear and anger spread like wildfire. The council tried to calm the crowds, but old prejudices were hard to break. Alina realized that saving life was not just about science, but about trust and unity. Meanwhile, a new threat appeared. One of Zephora's own scientists, jealous of Lyra's position and skeptical of humans, began sabotaging experiments. Equipment malfunctioned mysteriously, samples went missing, and alarms echoed in the lab. Lyra and Alina worked tirelessly to uncover the culprit. Every moment brought tension. Every error felt catastrophic. If sabotage continued, Zephora's chance for survival could vanish. During one late night, as Lyra reviewed DNA sequences, she noticed anomalies. Some embryos were not developing correctly. Panic surged through her veins. Did someone tamper with the samples? She whispered to Alina. Alina's eyes widened. "We have to find out before it's too late." They discovered that the saboteur had tried to inject foreign DNA into the Zephoran human embryos. The risk was enormous. It could destroy the fragile integration and erase all hope. But the crisis also revealed strength. Alina devised a clever way to protect the embryos, using a combination of human intuition and Zephoran technology. They repaired the damage and reinforced the laboratory. Lyra realized that this challenge, though terrifying, had strengthened their teamwork. They had faced the first real test of trust between humans and aliens. At the same time, cultural misunderstandings created smaller crises. Alina accidentally offended a group of elders by misinterpreting a ritual. Minor conflicts arose in the lab and the council. Lyra had to mediate, explaining human ways while respecting Zephoran traditions. It was delicate work, balancing diplomacy with scientific urgency. Even small mistakes could lead to rejection or panic. Then came the emotional challenge. The embryos began to develop more quickly than expected. Zephoran parents to be watched anxiously, fearing something might go wrong. Alina felt the pressure, knowing that hope and despair were entwined. One family lost a child during early trials. The grief spread through the city, reminding everyone that life was fragile. Alina comforted the family as best she could. She realized that science alone could not heal the heart. Trust, empathy, and courage were equally important. As the weeks passed, threats continued. Saboteurs, protests, and misunderstandings tested the human-alien alliance. Yet each challenge brought lessons. Alina learned Zephoran patience and precision. Lyra learned human creativity and adaptability. Together, they built something stronger than technology or genetics: trust and cooperation. By the end of this period, Zephora was still fragile. The embryos were surviving, but the mission was far from over. The world watched, tense and uncertain. Every Xiphoran understood that the final stages of the plan would require bravery, honesty, and sacrifice. And every human realized that their actions could shape the destiny of an entire alien race. Lyra and Alina stood together on a balcony overlooking the floating city. The twin moons reflected on their faces, silver light mingling with hope and worry. "Tomorrow will bring new challenges," Lyra said softly. Alina nodded. "But we've come this far, haven't we?" "Yes," Lyra replied, "and we will go further, together." The night air was still, but the tension remained. Xyphora was on the edge. The future of life balanced delicately. And the next step would test not just their minds, but their hearts. The sun rose over Xyphora, casting golden light across the floating cities. For the first time in years, the air felt lighter, filled with hope and anticipation. The embryos, carefully nurtured by humans and Xyphorans together, were thriving. The once silent laboratories now buzzed with energy and optimism. Alina stood beside Lyra, watching the first Xiphoran children begin to move and respond. Tiny limbs stretched, eyes shimmered, and soft sounds filled the air. The council gathered to witness the moment, their expressions a mixture of awe and relief. Tears ran down the faces of many elders, the weight of fear finally lifting. "What we feared was the end," Elder Thrin whispered, "has become a new beginning." The city erupted in quiet celebration. Xyphorans and humans worked side by side, sharing knowledge, laughter, and gratitude. The barriers that had once separated their worlds, fear, prejudice, and doubt, were beginning to fade. Lyra realized that humanity had done more than save a species. They had bridged two worlds, teaching Xyphora a lesson in courage, empathy, and hope. And so, the stage was set for an incredible journey. A human would travel across the stars, stepping into a world of wonder, danger, and responsibility, where the fate of Xyphora rested in hands from a distant planet, and where the story of life, hope, and courage would take a bold new turn. The countdown to contact had begun, and the Xyphorans, once hopeless, now watched the stars with anticipation and wonder. For they knew the next step would change everything. Lyra watched the human spacecraft approach Xyphora. Her heart pounded as she prepared to guide it through the planet's protective energy fields. The craft shimmered in the sky, small but determined, carrying the fate of an entire civilization. The human inside, named Dr. Alina Carter, was unaware of the immense responsibility resting on her shoulders. As the craft landed, a team of Xyphoran scientists, including Lyra, rushed to greet her. Alina stepped out, her eyes wide with awe. She had seen images of alien worlds before, but nothing prepared her for Xyphora. Floating cities, shimmering towers, and beings who moved with elegance she had never imagined. Yet the wonder did not erase the tension. The aliens were desperate, and the mission would be dangerous. Lyra guided Alina through the city, explaining the infertility crisis in simple terms. "The survival of our species depends on your help," Lyra said. Alina swallowed, fear and excitement battling inside her. She realized she was not just visiting a new world. She was stepping into a story that would change history. Not all Xyphorans welcomed her. Some looked at her with suspicion and fear, whispering among themselves. "What if she fails?" they asked. "What if humans cannot be trusted?" Lyra ignored them, focusing on the work ahead. The council had agreed that humans were the only hope, and that hope had to be protected. The first challenge was understanding the Xyphoran genetic systems. Alina studied alien DNA, sequences that twisted and shimmered like light. It was complex, almost beyond comprehension. But Alina's experience with human genetics gave her insight. She began to see patterns, connections, and possibilities. Every discovery filled her with both hope and fear. Meanwhile, some Zephoran factions plotted against the mission. They believed involving humans was dangerous. They feared contamination, mistakes, and betrayal. One group attempted to sabotage the lab. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and security forces rushed to stop them. Elena and Lyra barely managed to protect the delicate DNA samples. The danger reminded them both that this mission would not be easy. Days turned into nights as humans and Zephoran worked together. Elena learned to navigate alien technology. Lyra learned to trust human intuition. Their bond grew stronger, built on respect and urgency. They were united by a single purpose: to give Zephora a future. Then, a breakthrough came. Elena discovered a way to integrate human DNA with Zephoran biology. It was risky, but it could work. The moment of truth approached, and the council gathered to witness the first experiment. All eyes were on the lab, tension crackling like electricity in the air. As the experiment began, alarms sounded again. The opposing faction had tried one last desperate attempt to stop them. But the human-alien team remained calm, focused, and determined. They completed the integration successfully. Life sparks appeared in Zephoran embryos for the first time in years. Hope returned to Zephora, shimmering like the stars above. Yet the mission was far from over. Elena realized that understanding the science was only half the challenge. Convincing all Zephorans to accept humans, to trust them, was the next battle. Cultural differences, fear, and prejudice could destroy everything they had achieved. Lyra knew they had to move carefully, balancing hope and diplomacy. As night fell over the floating city, Elena and Lyra stood together, watching the stars. They both knew the journey ahead would test courage, loyalty, and wisdom. But for the first time, Zephora had a chance, a fragile, brilliant chance. And humanity had become the unexpected hero of a world far beyond their own. The first step had been taken, but greater challenges awaited. And the story of survival, trust, and interstellar cooperation was only beginning. The days after the first successful experiment passed quickly. Zephora seemed to shimmer with hope. Embryos grew healthy, and whispers of a new generation spread through the cities. Yet, beneath the surface, tension simmered. Not all Zephorans accepted humans, and not all humans were ready for the enormity of what they had done. Elena spent hours in the lab, working with Lyra. She observed the embryos and adjusted sequences carefully. Each success brought relief, but also deeper responsibility. She understood that one mistake could erase years of work, and the fate of an entire civilization rested on her hands. Even the opposition, those who had doubted the humans, began to accept the truth. Some apologized for their resistance, others silently nodded in respect. It was clear now that humans were not just visitors. They were allies, teachers, and heroes. And for Zephora, that was more valuable than technology or power. Elena took a moment to speak to the council, her voice steady. "I did not come here to take credit or glory," she said. "I came because life is precious, and every species deserves a chance." Her words resonated deeply with everyone present. Hope and gratitude rippled through the chamber, a bond forming that transcended star systems. Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had dreamed of saving Zephora, but now she realized it was more than a dream. It was a story of unity, trust, and cooperation. Humans and Zephorans together had achieved what neither could have done alone. Months passed, and Zephora slowly returned to its former glory. Children laughed and played in the streets, their voices a melody that had not been heard in a decade. Families rebuilt, communities grew stronger, and the cities shone brighter than ever. The bond between humans and Zephorans became a legend, a story told to every generation. A reminder that even the smallest species could change the fate of a great civilization. Lyra and Elena stood together on a hill overlooking the city. The twin moons reflected in their eyes, shining with promise and wonder. Do you think they will ever forget what we did? Alina asked quietly. Lyra shook her head, smiling. No, they will remember, and they will tell the story to their children. Alina nodded, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. They had saved a civilization, and in doing so, had changed the galaxy forever. As night fell, stars twinkled above, silent witnesses to the courage and sacrifice below. The humans prepared to return to Earth, but their legacy would remain. Sephora had learned that survival was not just about strength or intelligence. It was about hope, courage, and the willingness to reach across the stars to help another. And for humanity, it was a reminder that even the smallest choices could have a cosmic impact. The story of Sephora and humanity would be told for generations. A tale of trust, bravery, and the unbreakable bond between worlds. And as the first Sephoran children laughed under the twin moons, it was clear that life, hope, and courage had triumphed. And the galaxy would never be the same again.